Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We people don't know that we narrowly averted a little technical catastrophe thanks to Michael's genius, but
Yeah.
we're good. We're here, and we're here to celebrate the end of democracy. Right? Is that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It kind of like was on life support, I guess. It might survive another 2 years, depending on if the right democratic solution just happened.
I mean, isn't John Fetterman just proof that we have democracy in this country?
Yeah. We need 100 John Fettermans in the Senate.
Really, isn't that like he is the ultimate representation of a democratic society? He is who we're sending.
Mhm.
I mean, he is the everyman. He's the people. He's just like you and me.
Mhm. Did you see Cernovich's tweet about Fetterman?
No.
That Caligula sent a horse to the Senate. This year, Democrats sent Fetterman.
Cernovich is on fire on Twitter lately. Yes. Well, we will talk a lot about Fetterman. I have many things to say about him. I don't know where you want to start, but I mean, the main thing is that I'm proven right. So that's the most important thing, because for about a year now, of course, if anybody who's listened to me for 5 minutes knows that I've been saying over and over again, the Republicans are going to win, and it's going to unleash this wave of oversight investigations in Congress, and everything will become known. Now, that's still true, because the Republicans took the House for sure, and they might take the Senate, but they don't even need the Senate. As long as they have the House by any majority at all, they will have power over those oversight committees, and they will have subpoena power, and the game is on in January, baby. And I can't wait for it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if you want to start there, is that kind of overblown, though? Because the MAGA candidates who were supposed to be the new leadership, to be the crazy ones on this oversight committees, didn't win. The kinds of people who would call these hearings may not have gotten in. And perhaps McCarthy won't be, he'll be a bit of a rhino. He'll be a bit of an establishment Republican and not really want to press the issue on this stuff.
No, we got J.D. Vance. He's going to be in there. Blake Masters could still be in there. Mm-hmm. And then we still have MTG in the Congress, in the House. And yeah, not to mention, Rand Paul and Ron Johnson also won, which is huge. And Jim Jordan as well. We got lots of people in Congress who are going to go hard on these investigations, and they're going to love issuing subpoenas to Tony Fauci, et cetera. I mean, to me, this is what everyone should want, regardless of your politics, because all that means is more information. We're going to know more about things like the workings of the FBI, the origins of COVID-19, what really happened in these elections. That's what they're going to do. They're going to investigate. These oversight committees in Congress have no power to punish. They can't do anything to anybody except pull them up before Congress and make them testify under penalty of perjury before a nationally televised audience about what's actually happened, what they've actually done. So everyone should have been rooting for a Republican, and especially a MAGA victory, because we wouldn't get that. These things would always be in darkness. We would never get to the bottom of what actually happened in the election and with COVID and et cetera, without the Republicans winning Congress. And so, or just one house of Congress, which is what they did. So this is great. This is great news. Not to mention the fact that mixed government is always good, divided government. So we'll have a Democratic executive and Republican Congress. Great, which means they can't get anything done, which is, again, what everyone should want. So we have the perfect outcome, I think. As close to perfect as possible, not to mention the fact that both parties are depending on people who are functionally retarded to represent them. So we've got John Fetterman for the Democrats and Herschel Walker for the Republicans. And there's others too. Katie Hobbs, if she wins, is one of the most embarrassing politicians I've ever witnessed in my life. She refused to debate Carrie Lake and give a big explanation as to why she couldn't debate Carrie Lake to CNN. It's a shit show, but it really shows you who the parties are and what democracy really looks like.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel during election day? Like, what's going through your head? I kind of feel like a Jew on Christmas is what I'm getting at.
No, well, I mean, I was actually a little nervous about this. I
Mhm.
had this one. I had some anxiety, and I think because a real red wave, I think, would have had some scary elements to it. I mean, some of those people, and especially if they had like a real critical mass in Congress, they could have pushed through some legislation that would have done some great damage. I mean, a lot of MAGA wants to make Twitter and Facebook into public utilities, meaning they want the government to control those things, which means that they themselves wanted to control those means of communication. That would not have been pretty. All sorts of legislation, probably repealing rights for gay people and trans people and maybe even women. And they could have lots of bad stuff and cultural stuff. I think on economics, they're going to be quite good, or better at least. Foreign policy, they're going to be bad, but better than the Democrats. And some of the MAGA people, like Vance, is a great anti-war politician. And at least that's what he's been saying all along. I mean, he's been the best on the Ukraine war among all politicians for a long time now. So I'm excited about that. Joe Kent, if he wins in the House, running in Washington State, best anti-war candidate I have seen since Ron Paul. And if he makes it in, and people are predicting that he will make it in, I mean, we're going to have some very interesting, useful people in Congress. And I am not a partisan. I'm saying for my purposes, which are twofold. One is to end the wars and U.S. military engagement around the world. And two is just to find out more about these major issues that we've been arguing about for a long time, in particular, the origins of COVID, because I believe the origins are in biowarfare research. So let's get to the bottom of it. And that's what we're going to get. We're going to get a new, small, but significant and loud anti-war faction in Congress. And we're going to have these phenomenal investigations. So let's go. I'm ready. But no, it's not Christmas.
Yeah. It's just a weird feeling in the air. I don't know how to describe it.
How do you feel about it?
It's just like tracking politics all the time and caring so much about it. And yeah, staying home is how we celebrate it, I guess.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. All day today I've been thinking, do I really want to talk about horse races all day long and all night long? But one day a year, it's fine. We can do, most of the time we don't talk about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's fun. And it is very significant. I mean, no matter what,
mm-hmm.
no matter how obscure a philosopher you are, I mean, this stuff still is the most important thing in the world, because it is deciding the leadership of the most powerful country in the history of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that's pretty important. And I'm just really glad. I'm really glad it's John Fetterman. And I think that MSNBC, I think they made a very good recommendation, a couple of their commentators, that he should run for president.
Yeah. I almost got that clip, but yeah, because he was. That's the crazy thing, is like they don't give a shit at all about who the person actually is. Like you could just see how thoroughly impressed that he was able to magically get more Republican voters than Biden. Like, because the horse race happened to magically work out some way, they just start getting giddy over the prognostication for the whole country.
Same goes for the Republicans, though. I mean, have you watched Herschel Walker talking? Yeah. I mean, I watched his debate with Warnock, and it was embarrassing. I mean, I don't remember what Herschel Walker, how he talked before he was playing, or before he was a veteran in the NFL. In other words, before any possible brain damage. I assume it's brain damage, but it could just be that he's always been this way. I mean, he can't actually complete a sentence grammatically. He doesn't have all the syntax in his sentences. You can sort of discern what he means, but you have to think hard when you're listening to him. Yeah. Whereas with Fetterman, and with Biden for that matter, but with Fetterman, of course, I mean, there's many times it's true gibberish. It's unintelligible, not just incoherent, but unintelligible. And again, I am very stoked for this. I can't wait to see him in the Senate and giving speeches from the floor. I mean, we should demand John Fetterman to be the tribune of the people, which he claims to be. He should be giving speeches a lot. I want him to be talking a lot for me, because I'm working class and I'm American, and I need him to stand up for me. And so I need him to speak for me, to be my voice in Congress as much as he can.
Mm-hmm. Well, you brought this up. You might as well let everybody know John Fetterman's actual background, what schools he attended.
John Fetterman.
Yeah.
John Fetterman. So, yes, this is what bothers me about him much more than his cognitive impairment. It is that he was born to a wealthy insurance executive in York, Pennsylvania, a wealthy suburb of. I knew someone who grew up in York, and she was the daughter of a judge, and so it's that kind of place in York. He went to Harvard to get a vanity master's degree, and he's been cosplaying a working class hero for years. He decided it would be cool after not having a job, much less not being working class, than not being working class. He didn't have a job and was supported by his father for years and years. And then he decided it'd be cool to be mayor of Braddock, which is just about the most burned out, horrible Rust Belt town you could ever find, full of poverty and crime and boarded up windows and closed factories and all that. And I mean, one of the most notorious drug gangs in the country is in Braddock, based in Braddock. I found out about them from Dan Musig, who was on the show. Yeah, and as far as I know, Braddock is exactly as bad as it was when John Fetterman became mayor of Braddock. So it's a joke. I am offended that he is pretending to be some, as I said, some working class hero with his Carhartt, ostentatious Carhartt hoodies. And I mean, Carhartt isn't even like, people now know, or onto Carhartt. They now know it's for hipsters, not even like real steel workers. You know, I mean, steel workers probably wear some other brand now. Well, there aren't any steel workers, but anyway, Fetterman is a incredible joke on all of us. He's a joke on democracy. He's a joke on the Democratic Party. He's a joke on electoral politics. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We want people to take the institutions of American politics less seriously.
Mm-hmm. You know, Michael Malice, I believe, donated to Fetterman's campaign for this purpose.
Yeah. Right. No, it was a good move. I saw that. Michael did that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, democracy looks really bad now because of this. I mean, this is who we're putting up there. This is who we're sending to Washington. The demos has spoken, and it has chosen this guy. It's incredible. I mean, just think about all the people in business, in the arts, even in academia, who are 10, 20, 50 times more intelligent and competent and dynamic and creative than John Fetterman is. Think about all the people who are smarter than that guy, who we just know about, and we're nowhere near the Senate. But this is the guy. He's going to be one of 100 people making the biggest decisions in the world.
Mm-hmm. You know, it goes to show that the ideal candidate for a Democrat is like an empty, brainless robot that will pull the lever for whatever Nancy Pelosi tells him to do, which is why you see people celebrating him getting elected, right? Is that we know for a fact that he's going to vote the way he's told to vote.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he pretty much is a party man as far as I can tell. I mean, he kind of tips his hat a bit to the Bernie Sanders faction, but he plays ball entirely with the leadership. He'll do what Biden tells him to do. Mm-hmm. Although, yeah. So, it's astonishing. Now, I will say this. I mean, until the age of Trump, and Fetterman is very much a product of the age of Trump, right? Until the age of Trump, pretty much every politician in the Senate and the House, and in state politics too, was the same. I mean, it was cookie cutter situation where they all looked the same. They dressed the same. They had the same hair. They had the same manner of speaking, right? In the very dry sort of tone, right? That you have to be old enough to remember this, but until pretty recently, all politicians were the same, utterly boring, never said anything that deviated from the party line. And it was quite Soviet American politics in that way, where the discourse was tremendously narrow, and the style that was allowed, right? The civility that was imposed on politicians, they had to behave in a very particular, uptight way, very repressed and restrained. And that all changed with Trump. I mean, Trump was as we all know, was the first politician to basically say, I don't care about any of that stuff, and I will do what I want and say what I say, and my hair will look exactly how I want it to look, which is unlike all the other politicians before me. The Fetterman clearly is part of that. And I guess that's a good thing. I mean, do I need our US senators to be well-dressed and to be respectable? I don't think so. I think it's probably good, again, to knock that institution down a notch in terms of its respectability. And that's certainly what John Fetterman will accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, either way you look at it, you get actual working class representation. Like, you want somebody who sounds like an AM talk radio host, I think, to represent the working class. And, or it just brings the whole institution down. So, win-win.
Yeah. Godspeed, John. Godspeed.
Mm-hmm. So as I was watching the election on Twitter, I noticed that, like, for every, I follow pretty much all right-wing and dissident voices on Twitter. Like, I'll see the discourse that's the standard if I want to or not. So I don't really bother following anybody else. But I noticed that it was like 10-1, like Democrat to Republican, liberal to conservative, tweeting about the election and the racehorse about every single thing. Like, the 10 or 20 liberals I do follow were just tweeting every single second and knew every little detail about everything. And Republicans just cared about their 1 or 2 pet elections that they actually voted in.
What do you make of that?
The Yankee imperialism of these Democrats.
Right. They need to be in everybody's business.
Yeah.
Which accounts for the reaction to the Dobbs decision, the overturning of Roe, which was the devolution of power over abortion, right? That's what that was. They couldn't stand it. You know, people, these women who lived in San Francisco or Manhattan or Santa Monica, were outraged that these people across the country in some other part of the world would be living under a different law than their own. And so, yes, you have to be a universalist if you're going to be a liberal. That's what it is. It's a universalist creed. And this is exactly why it's so dangerous. And this is exactly why liberals have wreaked more destruction around the world in the last 100 or so years than any other political faction in this country. Progressives, as we know, led all the big wars of the 20th century, and they want to be in everyone's business still. So, yeah, I just think that's a great example of that. You know, that they're utterly concerned about how Mississippi governs abortion.
Yeah,
they need to have a say in that.
I was telling you this, but I saw in a billboard as I was driving up to Chicago that said, "You own your body, not the state of Indiana. Go to abortion.ca.gov for more information."
Right.
So, yeah, your government is paying for billboards in my state on this issue.
My government, California government. Yeah, right. No, I know. Yeah, someone just yesterday or 2 days ago was telling me about how some company they were working for here was paying for women to travel to California to get an abortion. Mm-hmm. Like, this is the thing now. Like, in all the deep blue states, they're stepping up to help the poor women of the red states get abortions, which is, and I'm basically pro-choice, but there's something really, I was going to say creepy, but it's macabre, I would say, you know, to do that. Yeah.
That's the thing about abortion. It was the second biggest issue in exit polling as to why people came out to vote. I'm not sure how much that favors the Democrats. I bet it does a lot for Gen Z, but I think Roe versus Wade being shot down brought pro-life people out as much as it brought pro-choicers.
Unmarried women broke by 37 points to the Democrats. Mm-hmm. That was the difference in the voting for unmarried women. 37 points to Democrats. Biggest, I think, is the biggest difference among all the demographic groups. But that tells you that abortion was the big issue in this, and it tells you that women still, and I guess young women, are still the power in this country. And it also, I mean, you know, it's the one issue that all liberals are aware of. You know, liberals are low information voters like everyone else in this country, but they all know about abortion. They're all very keen, very concerned about abortion, and maybe secondarily gay rights. They can tell you about who's pro-choice and who's not. They know that, but they don't know anything else about politics, really. But it's very interesting how obsessed liberals are with the abortion issue. And I can't fully explain it. Because it affects only some of them, not even a majority of liberal voters, I think, are going to have an abortion or even maybe know someone who has an abortion. But I don't know. What do you think? What is it with, and especially younger women now, people in your generation, why would they care so much about that?
No, I've heard so many times that this is the only, like women have come up to me and said, this is literally the only reason why I vote.
Right.
And I could give you the awful misogynist right-wing take that's boiling in my mind that is obviously wrong, but here's what I'll say.
Well, let's do this.
Yeah.
Pretend you were an awful right-wing misogynist.
Yeah.
Okay. So what would you say if you were one of those people?
If I happened to be a member of the He-Man Woman Haters Club,
right?
I would say that I think it's like an eternal adolescence thing. Like, I think women don't want to grow up, and they're terrified of their own bodies, and they don't want to accept the consequences of their actions.
You would say that if you were a right-wing misogynist.
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
That they have this existential fear that that they won't have an emergency out should something go wrong. Whereas, like,
wait a second. Are you
they care about?
Are you? Wait. Are you actually? Jokes aside, are you actually anti-choice?
I'm not anti-choice. It's just the dialogue on this used to be safe, legal, and rare, and now it's ubiquitous, subsidized, and celebrated. Is how the Democrats want it to be.
Right.
And again, I have the same emotional creep. Like, I don't advocate for any laws restricting access to abortion. And I think if you're really pro-life, you should increase access to contraceptives, because then you don't have unwanted pregnancies.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm probably legally on these women's sides, but I am just mortified by the cult of death that is surrounding it.
Then I'm totally with you. Yeah. Right. Yeah, my thing about abortion has always been, I've said this for decades, is that I am just annoyed with the dishonesty of the pro-choice side. They've never once said, we want rights to abortion because we want to fuck without consequences.
Yeah.
Which I could get behind. That I can get behind, because I want to fuck without consequences too.
Yes.
So the birth control pill gave us that first in the early 60s, and then Roe v. Wade gave us that about 12 years later. And I'm basically for it until it's proven to me that it is murder, until you can really definitively show that it's the murder of a human being just like you and me. I'm gonna stay with my pro-choice position. But yes, let's be honest about what it is. It is fucking without consequences, which, you're right, is extended adolescence. Right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I just wish that, they hide it up in this politically correct terminology, or this deceptive terminology, that it's healthcare or that it's reproductive rights. It's all these euphemisms that obscure what we're actually talking about here.
Yeah, right. It's always about privacy, woman's right to choose, bodily autonomy. They use all these words that it's never what it's about.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever known a woman who's got an abortion because she wanted to preserve her bodily autonomy?
Yeah. The activist abortion never really happens.
Never. Yeah. That never is in their minds when they get an abortion. I've known many women who've gotten abortions. They never once said any of those things to me. It was always, what you expect. It's like, I can't have or I don't want to have a child now. But I want to have sex, and sometimes mistakes are made, and sometimes the condom breaks or whatever. And okay, again, so as long as it's not murder, and it still might be, and I respect the hell out of people who believe it is murder, by the way. I just haven't seen proof that it is murder. Mm-hmm. As long as it's not murder, I'll let them have their extended adolescence, because I have mixed feelings about extended adolescence. Yeah. I like it and I don't like it. Mm-hmm. I like the fun and the pleasure of adolescence, but I don't like the fact that adolescents can't get anything done. That they're ineffectual people.
Well,
like John Fetterman.
yeah, I grew up in a milieu of feminism. Like,
Me
I think
too.
anybody born in the United States after like 1965, I think anybody has just feminist indoctrination to some level. It's just the air you breathe,
Yep.
your attitudes. And I was told that women can be anything that men can be. And if you want to play with the big boys, you've got to take responsibility. And I see just a total complete aversion to wanting to take responsibility happening here. And I think it's a feminist point to want girls to grow up into women and take responsibility for their actions. I've seen a lot of women post about this, just saying that they feel ashamed for, like, I've seen a lot of women in their 30s post that they feel ashamed by how much women in their 20s care about abortion. Like, yeah. Like, we agree with you politically. It's just, it's not that big of a deal. You don't have to be harpish about it, you know?
And you can always go to California to get your abortion anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Or, one of the other blue states. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm really torn on this. I mean, my whole career until recently, of course, was about celebrating the renegades, who are basically extended adolescents. That's what they are in a fundamental way, but they produced all sorts of wonderful things for us as well. And I love people who kind of refuse to accept the responsibilities that are forced on them by society, the obligations forced on them, the repression that you're supposed to have in our society, and to act according to your own wishes, your own desires, etc. But again, as I said, if the world is full of those people, and especially in leadership positions, as I say in the book, actually, we're going to look like Haiti real fast. And that's kind of where we're heading. There's a real decline in general competency among the political elites now. People we are sending to Washington, like John Fetterman, and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, and lots of them, and Lauren Boebert on the right-wing side. And, I mean, these are idiots. These are not people you would hire for a job. And I don't know exactly why that is, why American politicians are much less competent than they used to be. But that's where we are. That's where we are headed. And that is a scary prospect. I am not only anti-authoritarian, I am perpetually oppositional toward authority, and especially state power. But I want the state to be run by competent people. Because otherwise, really bad stuff happens. Really bad stuff happens. And again, we look like Haiti or some other third world country.
Yeah. One more thing I was going to say about abortion, though, real quick, is Roe versus Wade. I think it made national politicians more extremist because they could retreat to a position on the issue that gets their base fired up and not have any actual accountability for policy. Like, we talk about Europe having basically unrestricted abortion access in the first trimester, and then after that it's illegal for most states in Europe. And abortion isn't that much of an issue because they've culturally settled on this middle ground. Whereas the Supreme Court in the United States just said everybody gets access to it all the time. It's done. It's settled. Nobody can argue about it. And then because of that, politicians can play out these fantasies for fundraisers, but not actually have to write any policy about it.
Yeah, it is interesting that Europe is generally more restrictive than the United States is on abortion. And you're right, it's the first trimester, which seems pretty reasonable to me. I mean, they limit it to the first trimester, which that seems like enough opportunity to give a woman. And, most people don't see that as murder. I think maybe there's some hardcore religious people who would see it as murder. But I mean, there's some hardcore religious people, like Catholics in particular, who think birth control, like a condom, is murder. Using a condom is murder. But yeah, it is fascinating that it's not an issue, really, much of one in Europe. Because of that, although I don't know if we've really explained why. Why did Europe so easily compromise on this very big issue and we didn't? I don't have any answer for that. I really have no idea. But there's a very big difference between the two places on this. one compromise over that pretty reasonable position. And over here, we have this ongoing civil war, and it's like the hottest, most important issue, which is so crazy to me that's what determines elections is people's feelings about abortion. How many people get abortions?
Yeah. Again, yeah, I think it's like we talked about this with anarchism in our anarchism course when we read some of the American anarchists, and a lot of these libertarians and a lot of dissident people on the right tend to make assumptions about governments that are really just assumptions about the United States government, when the United States government is an empire that covers a bunch of vastly different cultures. Like the more you travel the United States, the more you realize we're totally different cultures everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And yeah, these states in Europe, I think they just culturally they settle on things a lot quicker because it's easier to, I guess.
Well, we'll see now that they have immigration up the yin yang in Europe, and you have people from very different cultures for the first time entering and staying in Europe. You know, what do they think? What do these Muslims from Syria think about abortion, for instance? Right? I mean, not good things. We know what they think about gays. And in fact, this is off topic a little bit, but there was a recent spate of horrible murders, including beheadings of gay men in Dublin, Ireland. And they were all carried out by Muslim men, and it was covered up because it was the wrong perpetrator. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, the Europe is becoming less homogeneous in general and on these issues. So interesting times are coming in Europe, of course, for many reasons. But yeah, I don't know. It's sort of pathetic again that this is what politics, American politics, revolves around, whether or not a woman should have the ability to remove her fetus.
Yeah, when you're the biggest empire in the world. That's the thing is like, I understand being selfish, but there's so on the national stage, there's so many more important things going on. Like, yeah,
I'd say so.
We're the empire. We're on the verge of nuclear war, and you're worried that somebody might have to drive 6 hours if they really want to kill their kid. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that the vast majority of women in Mississippi think abortion is very much murder.
Yeah.
So they have the law that they want, but you know, these so-called Democrats in California and New York, they think otherwise. They think they shouldn't be so democratic.
Do you think the election was on the up and up? Like, do you think Steve Bannon and everybody are ringing the alarm bells about this election the same way they did in 2020? I didn't pay attention to the votes as they were coming in, but you know, the machines in Maricopa were shut down. About 20% of them weren't working. There's all these reporters saying that the ballot boxes were already stuffed, that there's weird stuff going on. Are we still in the age of the corrupt bounce happening?
We have always been, or at least in my whole lifetime, pretty much every election that I know of on the national level has been rife with problems like this. And cheating and fraud, I think, is rampant in every election. I mean, Luzerne County in Pennsylvania, which is a big county in the northeast part of the state, I believe, half of their polling places ran out of paper. So they weren't counting votes at all. And now they're trying to catch up somehow. So they extended the time to vote until 10 o'clock at night while they were rounding up paper. I mean, who are these people running these polling places, by the way? They don't have paper available. Then the drop boxes, all these new additions. Yeah. So, and when you have all these states saying, like in Arizona and elsewhere, that it's going to take possibly weeks to determine the winner. I mean, this is 2022 in the United States of America. I believe elections in Europe never are like this. Even in the third world, I think they're more efficient. So, of course, there's going to be chicanery. There's going to be fraud. There's going to be just mistakes, you know, on a massive level, just major mistakes that are going to determine, again, the outcomes. I think most presidential elections could have gone either way because of this, you know, and also we often tend to have very close elections, especially on the national level. So it's all just nonsense and arbitrary. And the fact that both parties until recently have been essentially identical, you know, makes it all just absurd to begin with.
Mm-hmm. It's so weird to hear the messaging from the Democrats on this, that in one breath, we have the most voter suppression that has ever happened in places like Georgia. Like somebody on MSNBC was saying, if you wait out in line until 5 p.m., they won't give you a provisional ballot, all this stuff. And in the same breath, they'll say, oh, we have record turnout. More people have already voted before election day than ever before. So
yeah,
what's going on here?
You know that black people can't vote after 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
They can't, because after 5 o'clock they can't find the polling place. When it gets dark out, in November, they can't. Black people can't find it. So that's racist to reduce the time, to limit the time. And they also can't drive, and so they have to have the polling place has to be right next door to them. Otherwise, it's racist voter suppression. Yeah, it's incredibly racist how Democrats have been talking about this. The assumption is that black people are incompetent. They're simply less competent. So if you reduce the number of hours one can vote in, it'll affect only black people, apparently. But yes, in Georgia, where apparently all the racist voter suppression was going on, they had record turnout of black voters the last 2 elections. Record numbers of black people voted. So why is this? Why is this? If there's been so much voter suppression to stop black votes, why are they voting more than ever? Mm-hmm. None of it makes sense, and it's completely racist.
Yeah,
the Democratic position on voting rights and voter suppression and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. It's outrageous, and I wish they would shut up, but I don't think they will.
Yeah. Another narrative is this is the defeat of Trumpism, that Trump is the big loser. I don't necessarily see it that way. I see it more as like the Republicans have always been split between the MAGA wing and the establishment wing. Mm-hmm. And the crazier bad Trump candidates that, like Dr. Oz or some of the goofier ones that had no substance, ended up failing. But the good ones like Terry Lake seem to be winning. The good ones are coming through. So maybe it's just competency and candidate quality is what actually matters in the Republican space.
Well, what I think we found out is that Trumpism, nationalist populism, MAGA, that stuff simply isn't going to appeal to half the country. Half the country is just not going to have it, right? They're not going to ever become mainstream in that way. They can get about half the population to vote their way, but the other half will never. And that's, I think, they just sort of ran into that wall, right? The sort of image of the red wave, like had people thinking, oh my God, they're going to win 60, 70% of the House, or, they're going to win like major majorities, big majorities of everything. But that required big majorities of Americans to agree with Donald Trump on these things. And that's just not going to happen. So we are essentially where we were. It's just that, MAGA gained a little traction. The Republicans gained a little territory, and they will have more power. And as I said, they will now be able to conduct investigations, which is the best thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Helig Usvart just put in the chat, and I want to talk about this. TikTok is CCP psychological tool, and majority of single women pay attention to the TikTok feed. Basically saying that our virgin women are being brainwashed by the evil Chinese through these magical screen devices, cell phones. You tweeted out the alarmism about TikTok is in line with just about every other cultural panic that's happened in the United States.
Yeah. So the early 20th century, there was a hysteria, widespread fear about young white women getting kidnapped by Chinese men and sold into sex slavery. And this was called the white slavery panic of the early 20th century. And the Chinese men would lure women into opium dens by offering them drugs. And once they were in the opium dens, they would get them drugged and out of their minds. And then they would be able to kidnap them and rape them and make them into lifelong sex slaves. It's sort of similar. This discourse about TikTok. These women are getting seduced by these Chinese men. That's the CCP, getting lured into a life of dancing on video, in front of a camera and being sexy and sexual. And, but they don't know that they're being manipulated. These poor white women, they're being manipulated by these evil Chinese men who are making them into slaves, a form of sex slavery, right? Because they're using their bodies in TikTok, to show off. and make hot videos, etc. And but no, they're actually just in the service of the Chinese Communist Party and Chinese men. It's very similar. I think it's ridiculous. But yes, the discourse about TikTok is also about, well, this is the decline. This is a threat to American civilization. It is corrupting our youth. And that is exactly what was said about jazz music in the 1920s and about rock and roll in the 1950s and about disco in the 1970s and about radio and about television and even about automobiles. There was a panic about automobiles when they first started in the 1920s, that young people were going to use automobiles to leave their families and go off and have sex in the woods, which did happen sometimes. But all these things were seen as a threat to civilization when they first emerged. And there was panic. I mean, real panic. John F. Kennedy and Barry Goldwater held hearings in the United States Senate in 1957 about the threat that rock and roll constituted to American civilization. So it's nothing new to what is being said about TikTok. And I am not buying it. I am an absolute enemy of the Chinese Communist Party, but I do not believe TikTok is going to threaten American civilization in any serious way.
I'll give some steel manning to that argument, though.
Okay.
Everybody I know who gets their news from social media, well, they either don't vote or they vote Democrat. In that, the ones who are most self-assured that I'm doing my right thing and I'm playing my part, and they get their little "I voted" sticker, and they're not even that political. They just by default say they're doing the right thing, and I check D. Most of those people are the type of people who get their news from social media, TikTok.
Oh.
And it was terrifying. I don't have TikTok, but Instagram in particular in 2020, just the level of single noise propaganda that was being pumped out by seeing the George Floyd video over and over and over again, by seeing like black squares over and over again, and the reminder that you got every single day: are you registered to vote? Are you registered to vote? You get DM'd: are you registered to vote? You get ads everywhere. It's the first and last thing you saw in 2020. It wasn't that intense this year, which was weird, but yeah.
Well, okay. I mean, so my answer is gonna be a little bit trite, maybe, but it's the answer I have, which is no one's forcing you to watch TikTok.
Yeah.
And if we don't like what the CCP is putting out on TikTok, we need to put out more attractive things on our social media platforms. We need to be showing videos that the kids want to see and want to listen to. I mean, you've got to compete with them. You've got to compete with them. And that's it. Stop complaining about the CCP. They are putting out a message, and I think even government should be allowed to put out any message they want. And then we just have to compete with it. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe it's the case, Michael, that the Chinese Communist Party has more to offer young Americans than America has to offer young Americans. Maybe that's the case. In fact, in this one way, it does. The Chinese Communist Party does have more to offer. They have a better social media platform that young people like, that young Americans like. Well, and most of what goes on TikTok is not political, right? I mean, I don't spend a lot of time on there, but it mostly seems like very silly sort of lifestyle kinds of videos, right? And cultural stuff and dancing.
Yeah. Unless you're a political person, you're not going to see political stuff necessarily.
Yeah.
I will say, though, the internet seems to have its own politics, if that makes sense, in that it tends towards transhumanism.
Oh.
I think.
Flesh that out. What do you mean?
The more time you spend online behind an avatar of your choosing, in worlds that are created in digital space, the less you associate with physical reality, and the more you see things in certain abstractions, and that culture kind of perpetuates itself outward. That music festival I went to out in Oakland, it was it was Second Sky DJ Festival, and I saw like not just transgenderism, but transspeciesism, and it's not even that. Like, I don't know who was a furry and who wasn't, and it was an amazing atmosphere. It was like carnival. Like, yeah, you saw people dressed up as animals, and it was also Halloween. But there's like this particular ethic that you are whatever you create yourself as, and that the world is your oyster. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The internet has changed the world outside the internet, right? Especially young people now. They organize their lives, they create their own identities, they behave in particular ways according to what they do on the internet. So literally how they look and dress and how they walk and how they talk, where they go, what they do, they get from the internet, from their online life. Right. And so what happens on the internet, as weird and seemingly detached and abstract as it is becoming part of the real world too. It's now seeping out from our screens into our lived experience all around us, right? Is that what you mean? Like it is becoming the whole world now. Everything is now online because now, especially young people now look like their avatars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are deep connections, especially after the pandemic. A lot of them have made super deep connections on VR chat or on Discord or on these or on Twitter and in the intellectual space. Yeah, where I remember when we were up in Chicago, there was whisperings around like so-and-so. There's all these dissident Twitter accounts from Chicago. I wonder if any of them are here today, you know? That was being murmured all the time. Like, yeah, it definitely drips out into the real world.
Well, I mean, but I'm saying it's like it's not just dripping. It's like it's changing the way the world is structured and the way it looks, the way it feels, what people do in the real world, right? So basically, everything is becoming online. Mm-hmm. The whole world is now online. I mean, again, like the younger the person is, the more they look like an avatar, right, on the internet. I mean, they do. I mean, the hair is blue and they cosplaying and all the rest of it. I mean, I don't like it, but I'm old. So, that's just an old man talking, but it's how that affects politics, I guess, is the question here. And I'm not exactly sure, but if people if people are structuring their minds and their lives around what they consume on the internet, then those people who spend time on TikTok, one could say, are captives of the CCP.
Okay.
Maybe.
I'm getting at something more fundamental. So there's abortion as a huge issue. And then the other thing, transgenderism is the other huge issue. And I think most young people are kind of in step on those issues. Mm-hmm. And I think the more time you spend online, the more you see yourself as an abstraction beyond your physical body. Like you really experience yourself as a soul. And I think you believe that it's your right to alter your body in whatever way you want to reflect your inner vision of yourself. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm getting at, I think.
Yeah, right. And that's fascinating. And that is scary for a lot of people, older people, conservative people, right? Because that's a real freedom that we've never experienced before. No human beings have ever been able to do that. They've never been able to change their identities to that degree, that profoundly, right? Not just, going from being a man to a woman, but going from being a human being to what's the favorite animal among the furries? I don't know.
Oh, well, there's a lot of wolves out there. There's some cows. Okay. Well, women like to be cows nowadays.
They do?
Yeah.
Women choose to be cows?
Well, the women I saw were.
We better be careful. We could say something that
would yeah.
Burned at the stake. No, but anyway, yes. That is
Doja Cat. Like, look at Doja Cat as a performer. I want to talk to more young people about Doja Cat, but like, one of her early songs was "Bitch, I'm a Cow, Moo," and she's dressed up like a cow. Yeah, like this isn't coming from incels on the right. Like this isn't coming from, incels who stay at home, men. It comes from women too. Like a lot of women are engaged in these weird anime fantasies as well.
Oh yeah, "Bitch, I'm a Cow,
Moo." Yeah,
Moo. That's one of the greatest song titles of all time.
Yeah.
bitch, I'm a cow moo. Yeah, right. So God bless them. That is freedom.
Yeah.
That's real freedom and real power, by the way, and real autonomy. And so if you can remake yourself like that, then that gives you a tremendous sense of entitlement, right? And gives you a tremendous sense of freedom. Now, what does that mean in politics, though?
Yeah. Well, again,
because they all vote Democrat, dude. Like
they
just vote for the status quo. They're absolutely radical in their personal lives, right? And in their bodies, they're radical. They're making themselves into a different damn species.
Yeah.
But when it comes to politics, they just vote for whatever Democrat gets put in front of them. And they think that's amazingly awesome and rebellious.
I do think it should be a wake-up call that a lot of Republicans are behind the times. I think that, yeah, Republican positions on abortion are just like weird fantasies, like in Indiana here, we had a bill that got struck down by the Supreme Court, basically restricting it in all situations. And if you believe it's murder, and you restrict it in all situations, you know, just because a baby was born out of rape doesn't mean you get to kill it, is their argument. But nobody wants to live in a world where that's the law. That's just, you know, you could be as deontologically correct as you want to be, but nobody wants to live in a world where that's actually the law. So,
right. Well, I don't know about nobody, but I'd actually like to try it. I'd like for those states who believe that to do it. I mean, I guess they are doing that. Let's have an absolute ban, like a total ban. Let's go and see how they like it. And then we'll know what we think about abortion.
Yeah. Ethically, I kind of see it in the same way as zoning laws. Like, I don't like any laws, but, you know, if a community says that you can't build a strip club next to the high school, in the same way they can probably say, hey, we don't want abortion clinics in our community. I think,
Here's the thing, you know, fetuses are never going to protest.
Yeah.
Fetuses are never going to march on Washington. Fetuses are never going to run candidates for Congress. Fetuses are never going to riot in the streets. So we just have to decide on our own without any input from the fetuses.
Yeah. Here's the thing. It's like, I believe abortion's murder, but I also believe war is murder, you know? And in the same way that I don't go after troops and yell at them, calling them murderers. And I know a lot of people in the military, and I usually treat them with a lot of respect. And I say, hey, man, I bet what your decision was probably the best choice you could make for your life, giving yourself a lot of structure. But, you know.
That's a great, what do we think of a man who volunteered to serve in the Marines, volunteered for combat duty, and he went to some country like Iraq or Afghanistan, and he shot some people to death, and he came back? What do we think of him? Is he a murderer? Of course he is. But we have this cognitive dissonance again with veterans. And that, by the way, even liberals don't think of those people, or even a lot of lefties don't even think of those people as murderers. But that's just the case. Yeah, there's all sorts of splitting we do in our minds and compartmentalization, right, on these issues to make them compatible, so that we can sleep at night. But yeah, I mean, I'm all for the fetuses having a lobby, though.
Yeah, same. I always, whenever I talk about abortion, I always say, well, I don't actually say this, but I have the privilege of A, not being a woman, and B, already being born. So I really don't have any perspective on this.
It's a lot of privilege, man.
Yeah. And
do good with it.
That's why I take their advice. I sit down, shut up, and don't really comment on this issue because it doesn't really affect me necessarily.
Well, that's true too. Yeah, right. Exactly. Like, why should I have any say on this, or why should I care? I mean, it's not for me. And the women I date are way past that age anyway. So it's really irrelevant for me. But even if I weren't, dating, even if I were dating younger women, it's still not my thing. Let them decide. I just don't care.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
I wanted to talk about Brazil's election as well.
Okay.
Because just like in the United States, do you believe it was quote unquote legitimate?
Who knows?
Like there's that Venezuelan voting machine company that everybody says is corrupt, and another socialist got in because the socialist voting machine snuck in the socialist. Is there any truth to that, do you think?
Probably. I have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, Brazil is a massive, far-flung, crazily diverse country with major, serious third world level poverty, in addition to, you know, also being a first world country in a lot of ways. But that's just a wild mishmash. I mean, we don't have poverty like that in the United States, and they have a lot of it. So in the North in particular, you got like serious poverty. So who knows what goes on in those parts of Brazil, right? Out in the jungle, some village. What level of development have they attained? I mean, do they have machines that work? Do they have people who are competent to run the machines? I mean, just levels of competency, right? Then there's, of course, tradition of all kinds of weirdness in their politics. I mean, they had a military dictatorship until the 1980s. You know, for couple decades, they had a military dictatorship. That's not long ago. They have real socialist parties. They have real fascist parties. And then they have Bolsonaro and Lula kind of in the middle. It's incredibly fractious. There's actual political violence going on there. A lot of stuff that we don't have in the United States. They have in Brazil. So sure, it sounds like it's quite possible that there's somebody cheating, and they put Lula in prison on trumped up charges, right? Just to get him out of politics. Just all kinds of stuff. Corruption on a different level than what we have here. So, you know, was this election rigged? Sure seems like it could have been.
Yeah. You said Bolsonaro and Lula are in the middle. I totally agree with you on that. And I think that's something that's really overlooked because, again, like BRICS was Lula's original project. It's strengthened under Bolsonaro. And now Lula has to live with that. That's the big thing that is surprising for me about this election is Lula pretty much has to carry on Bolsonaro's project now.
On foreign policy, they're almost identical.
Yeah.
They're both very sympathetic to BRICS and both basically want to be in it. They're not as gung-ho as Russia and China, but they're into it. And on China, Lula has allowed the CCP to purchase something like, what is it? 30 or 40% of the Brazilian economy is now owned by Chinese concerns, something like that. And Bolsonaro is very friendly to the CCP too, despite his ties with Donald Trump. Yeah, they're almost identical. And on domestic issues, as far as I understand it, the only major real difference, fundamental difference, is on crime. That Bolsonaro was doing a hardcore law and order cleanup of the gangs, of the favelas, of the drug gangs and all that. And Lula was much more hands off. And by the way, one of the major accusations has been that Lula, or that gangs in Brazil, have been the ones rigging the election for Lula. That's why Lula won, is because he controls the gangs, or at least the gangs are loyal to him. And apparently they have a lot of political power and power over administrative apparatuses and the like, and that they are the ones who fixed the election for Lula. But I have no idea if that's true. Yeah,
that's the thing. It's impossible to know with all these elections. Like, this was one of the big TED Talks throughout all the 2010s, and when TED Talks were big, it's like, I believe every year there'd be a new one that'd be like, here's the perfect way to have a perfect system where every vote is verified, it's transparent. Like, everybody was saying our election machines are just ancient technology. Like, it's from the 70s in some instances, and it's completely not transparent. And there's so many technologies come so far that it'd be super easy. Nowadays, the thing is blockchain, but there'd be super easy ways to verify it with pictures and anonymous sites where you can go up and check and double check your link. But nobody actually wants to do that.
Yeah. I don't care.
Yeah.
Because I don't care about democracy. I think, essentially hostile to democracy. I think I'm pretty much opposed to it. But I'm mostly agnostic. I don't care, and I don't think I should care. I don't see any reason to care. You know, they talk about Russia being this autocracy with no democracy, right? All the time. And sort of at the formal political level, I guess that's sort of true. I mean, I don't think Putin has a dictatorship, but he certainly, there's less democracy in electoral politics, at least, than here. But I mean, life in Russia is very similar to life in the United States. You know, Moscow is a very modern city. In some ways, it's more modern, by the way, than American cities. Their infrastructure is much better. People spend their time on their phones, you know, looking at TikTok videos and trying to get laid on Tinder. And, you know, it's very similar. People have similar kinds of jobs. It's a very similar economy. But, you know, they have less democracy. So I just don't care. And I don't want to govern. I'm not interested in governing. I'm not interested in participating in governance. I just want someone to do it who's competent. So now I'm starting to sound a little bit like Curtis Yarvin, but Curtis has a point to make, which is that autocracies, monarchies, whether they're hereditary monarchies, or they're corporate monarchies, right? They're more efficient, more effective, and often more accountable, actually.
Mm-hmm. So I'm so split on democracy here because you convinced me not to vote this year.
Oh, good.
With your analysis of you don't want to merge your identity with power.
Never.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the big one. And I see it happen in real time. And I see that's what makes neighbors hate each other. Like, that's what makes politics so hostile.
Yeah.
In my opinion, is that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's right. That's why neighbors hate each other. That's why families have been splitting apart over politics, is that people merge their identities with these political candidates and these political parties and these political organizations and these political ideas. It becomes them, you know. Biden becomes me, you know. Trump becomes me, and it's essential, and it's identitarian. It's who you are, and so, you know, someone who has different politics becomes an existential threat to you, and therefore you cannot cohabitate with them. You can't get along with them because they constitute an existential threat, because they embody the enemy. You embody the good guy, and they embody the bad guy in this mortal conflict. Yes, let's get out of the business of identifying with politics and politicians and political causes. Let's look at these things more like consumers, as consumers would. What do I get out of this election? Like me, you know, I said I want to end the wars, and I want to get a lot more information about these issues. So therefore, I didn't vote, but I was rooting for the Republicans only for that reason, not because I give a shit at all about the Republicans. I don't identify with any Republicans in any way, but I just knew in this case, in this particular election, that they were going to be the more useful party for me, for my own values, which are very narrow, very limited. But the idea of putting like a politician's face on your chest, or, you know, on a poster in your house, like so many people have still to this day have posters of John F. Kennedy in their house. How many times have you seen a poster of John F. Kennedy in someone's house? It's
not
just
a poster, but like the old school thing is like a framed photograph, as if he's a member of your family. Like
right.
Yeah.
Right. What's this guy doing in your house? Why is he on the wall next to grandma? Like, what? Again, that's it. It's like this familial. It's tribal. That's the problem. It's tribalism. That's the problem. It makes people take politics and politicians way too seriously.
Yeah. So that's why I think we get such bad candidates nowadays, is that it becomes like a farcical negative feedback loop on itself, to where there's a sunken cost fallacy, where a lot of people hated Trump, I think, in 2020, voted to get him out because this is the most important thing you could ever do, which is what they're all being told. And then it does not matter how materially bad things get over the next 2 years. To vote Republican or to not vote for Democrat again would be to admit that I was wrong, and dealing with the cognitive dissonance of that is too much to deal with. So I have to keep in my pattern and keep on my team.
You know, Americans are not political people, and so tribalism is very convenient for them. Tribalism is great for the lazy. You don't have to study. You don't have to read the newspaper. You don't have to know about what's going on. You don't have to understand the issues. You just know that Team Blue is good and Team Red is bad. And so laziness results in incompetency, right? You get, I mean, I think that's what you're getting at. You know, there's tribalism makes,
and that's how you get Oz too.
Yes, tribalism makes people dumb.
Mm-hmm.
It's anti-intellectual.
Yeah, man, the candidates were so bad this time around. It's not that big of a surprise that Fetterman's in, seeing that he was up against Oz.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Oz was a fucking joke. I mean, he was terrible candidate. I mean, he was like this. I mean, I was just thinking about like the typical Pennsylvania voter, typical American looking at this guy. Like, so he's kind of weird and exotic. He's got this accent. Okay. But he also comes with Trump. So if you have any kind of misgivings about Trump, I don't see why you would ever vote for Oz. Yeah. Also, like, he was so clearly, I mean, actually what Fetterman said about Oz in terms of class was right. I mean, although he could have said the same thing about himself, both rich kids basically fighting against each other. But yeah, Oz clearly has no way, he has no understanding at all of ordinary American people and how they live and what it means to struggle paycheck to paycheck and what it means to worry about the rent this month. And yeah, they're rich people. But you know, what else is new in American politics? Electoral politics in this country has always been fights between rich people for control of the government.
Mm-hmm. So you convinced me not to vote through. Good. Yeah. Like literally, as soon as you said, don't merge your identity with power, it's like, oh, dominoes fell. I see people doing that. Curtis Yarvin almost convinced me to vote Democrat.
Because that's funny as hell. Why? Explain that one.
Because, and you said this in the debate, your heroes are the American slaves. And if you live under occupation and if you live under power, the best thing to do is to just comply with that power for the, you know, if I took the 30 minutes once every 2 years, which is not that much work, to just hit D, and then go home, you know, like now I'm all of a sudden, I'm with the cool people. I get to go to these dinner parties and say, yes, I did that thing and I'm on your side and don't worry about it, you know.
That's kind of a brilliant idea.
Mm-hmm.
We should not only vote Democrat, but then like wear the regalia, you know, wear the Biden-Harris t-shirts and have a poster in our front yard and go to dinner parties. Are dinner parties still happening? Does that still happen? Go to dinner. What's that?
Zoom calls.
Zoom calls. Right. Yeah. You go to wherever you go to socialize with people. And you talk you talk about how happy you were to vote for the Democrats and you're so glad that they won. But then you just start talking like yourself, you know, about the issues. Right. And then they're like, what do I do with this guy? I mean, I start talking about climate change, about what I really think about climate change. But right after I said I voted for all the Democrats.
Yep. Oh, man, that'd be the best troll, too, because there's right-wing reasons to vote for all of them. Like the socialist left critique that the Democratic Party is a center-right party is absolutely true.
Yeah. Well, you could also, it's a form of accelerationism, too.
Yes.
So I love that. But I mean, I love the idea of like, again, like coming up to someone and saying, I voted Democrat, I voted Joe Biden, yes, but climate change is a crock.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
Yep.
Can we talk about this now? Now that I voted for your guy, maybe that's it. That'll be the deal. Listen, I'm going to vote for your guy, which is the most important thing, right? In exchange for you listening to me.
Yeah.
Tell you what I think about all these issues.
Mm-hmm.
People should try that.
Yeah.
We're going to start a movement, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. And then like literally all 4 options. Don't vote at all. It's the easiest to do because you literally do nothing. So I've done that a couple times. Vote Republican because you don't want shit on your streets.
Mm-hmm.
The Jack Mason, the perfume nationalist argument that all social issues are fake and meant to divide us. The only thing that actually matters is the competency of these people. And Democrats will invent stupid laws that make your life much worse. They'll force you to take plastic bags, and then they'll take those plastic bags away and restrict them. Then they'll force you to wear a mask, and then they'll force you to get jabbed.
Yep.
And they'll just bog down everything and make your life worse. And so just vote Republican and laugh at all these people who annoy you because you did the wrong thing, the naughty thing. Very compelling.
No, I'm going to vote. I'm serious. I'm going to rejoin the Democratic Party. I was a member in 1984. Last time I was a member of the Democratic Party when I voted for Walter Mondale. I'm going to rejoin the Democratic Party, and I'm going to be an active member of the Democratic Party. I'm going to try to become a delegate, actually, to the convention. But I'm going to speak my mind while I'm doing all that. I will be fully a part of the party, an active member of the party. I will vote for all the candidates. I'll vote straight blue, but I will say exactly what I always say about politics. And this is going to be a lot of fun. And it's going to become a movement. Watch. Join me, people. Join me, those listening and watching around the world. Get your Biden t-shirts and get ready to talk some shit.
Yeah, there might be more freedom once this is actually a one-party state.
We could call ourselves Joe's slaves or something like that.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I'm not going to riff on the possible slavery connotations, but yeah. So also, like, I think that you might actually, from a practical standpoint, be able to affect the levers of power more effectively if you do that. Because let's be honest, the Democratic Party is the people who are actually in charge. If they don't, if you're on their side, they don't have to worry about you. They're not actively fighting against you.
That's right.
The more money you have, also, the more you can play the game and buy politicians. A lot of people say that why vote, or politicians could be bought, so you should probably spend your time getting rich and buying politicians. And
I wonder if the parties can expel members. Can you be expelled as a Democrat? Like, can they get rid of me? I don't think so. Maybe they can.
I don't think so. Honestly.
I mean, I can still vote. I can still vote for them. They can't stop me from voting for them.
Yeah, they can't stop me from voting for them.
And I will even take pictures of my ballot, to prove that I voted for them. I think this is an amazing idea.
Yeah.
I think Curtis would approve of it too. I love it. Although it's not really his thing, because we're still starting some shit. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're still being rebels. He doesn't want to be rebellious at all. No, I want to be rebellious, but I want to do it in a way that makes it impossible for them to ignore.
Yeah.
That's it. See, they can ignore us now, right? They don't give a shit what podcasters say. But if we're active members of the Democrat and run for office too, I'm going to run for office as a Democrat. It's going to be amazing. Can't wait for this.
And then I was considering voting third party, in that I like Libertarian being on the ticket and taking up more space than the difference it took to win the election. I think that's important. I'd like for the socialists, the Green parties, and all the third parties to overtake the gap between Democrat and Republican, to where, if all the Libertarians voted for Republican, a Republican would have won. Or if all the Libertarians voted Democrat, the Democrat would have won.
Well,
I want that to happen in as many places as possible.
I mean, that is the case often. The Libertarians are basically spoilers often. And in fact, what was the race where it was very clear that the Libertarian completely lost the election for the Republican? That the difference between the two was exactly what the Libertarian got?
Probably governor in Georgia. All the races in Georgia were kind of like that. I think Shane Hazel got a decent amount.
It wasn't Georgia. I know about Georgia. I don't think it was. Anyway, yeah. But no, it's very common for Libertarians to do that. So you want the third parties to be spoilers.
Yes.
Right. Sure. I mean, why? What do we get for that?
Well, you get both parties saying, if you want to actually win elections, you've got to cater to these people who are willing to show up on election day and believe this stuff.
Right. Then they become power brokers.
Yeah.
So Angela McArdle of the Libertarian Party can go to the Republicans and the Democrats and say, hey, if you don't abolish the Fed, we're gonna spoil this election for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
Do you think, here's the other narrative, last narrative that came out of the election, or another one, that DeSantis won, which also means that Trump lost. And that, like, they've been trying to do this forever, build this psychological division between Trump and DeSantis.
So I think I saw quite a few people on the MAGA right, even like Cernovich, saying that Trump was done now, that Trump was the big loser in the election and that his movement was over and that he will no longer be the leader of the party, that DeSantis will be the leader of the party. Could be. I mean, the thing is, DeSantis barely won in 2018. I mean, by the skin of his teeth, he barely won against a not impressive candidate. What's his face? Andrew Gillum. Barely won. And so he's had one quite good election. Does that mean he's going to really run the tables nationally? He might. He is sort of Trump without the baggage. He's Trump without the orange. He's Trump without the out of control egotism. And he's very smart. He's very competent. He seems to know how to govern. He understands how politics works. And he got a lot of blue votes. He flipped a lot of blue counties. I think it was like 7 or 8. Went from Dem to Republican because this election. So yeah, sure. I mean, assuming he wants to run in 24, he could be the man. I don't know though if Trump is done. It's hard to say. I mean, people are making a lot out of how his candidates didn't do well. Well, that's not really true. Like I said, like JD Vance won easily. Blake Masters could still win. The goddamn Senate could still be Republican. People seem to be forgetting this, that we could still have an entirely Republican Congress with many more MAGA many more MAGA members in it than before. Lauren Boebert now could still win, by the way. That race is like, I think she just took the lead, in fact, about 3 hours ago. Yeah, by like 50 votes or something, but she could win that. But, you know, as I said before, like a lot of these people are still, MTG still in there. So yeah, and I don't see it. I think Trump still has a base. I still think he energizes a lot of people in the Republican Party. People get very excited about him. He's extremely famous, which just that alone is a massive advantage in politics. And that's the reason he became president in the first place, was that he was on TV, was a TV star. So he just had a huge amount of name recognition. That is the reason he won, by the way, in 2016. That is the only reason he won, or the main reason he won in 2016, is that he literally just was known to people. DeSantis doesn't have that quite. Trump's also very ambitious. He's very energetic. He's going to be declaring next week that he's going to run for president again, which he said, by the way, he said, this will be the most important announcement in American history. I'm like, dude, I mean, come on. I mean, fine. Yeah, that
is a man who worked in television right there.
Exactly. Exactly. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think Trump's done now?
I think Trump is too old, I think, to run for president again.
Yeah.
I think if he just stayed back and remained a public figure, he could be a good power broker, a good, I guess, symbolic leader. But I think he's just too old to be in politics at this point. And America is just exhausted of having him in office. So I totally agree with that, and to some extent. But I don't think Trumpism is dead. I think about a third of the country always had and always will just love that guy for what he did and for being the first person to ever speak up for them. And as you know, Jack the Perfume Nationalist said, he's the greatest countercultural art figure of the 21st century. And I think he's going to live on as that forever. And I think he should embrace that and just do less work and more fun.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen. Looks like he really wants to be president again. What kind of a masochist would you have to be? I can't even imagine. I mean, being a normal president requires masochism because half the country is going to hate you and you're going to be attacked 24 hours a day publicly. So is your family. I mean, it's just, I can't imagine wanting that job, but he wants to do it again when, I mean, the hatred has just been off the charts. Politicians make no sense to me. I've never been able to understand them. I've never been able to identify with politicians at all. Wanting that job, wanting to rule over people, to manage people, to punish people, and wanting a job in which you were guaranteed to be hated by millions and millions of people, hated. There will be people who want to kill you, who really want to kill you, and they would kill you if they could get away with it. There are millions, I don't know about millions, but there are many, many, many people who want to kill every president there is. Why would you want that job? Also, knowing that you're very likely to get anything done significant, it's very unlikely that you're going to change American history in any significant way as president. It's possible, but they tend not to, right? Things tend to just sort of chug along in the same direction, especially on foreign policy, right? No changes there. I've never understood why anyone would want to be a political leader.
Mm-hmm. In this case, I think it's all Trump's ego. And I think Biden running again in 2024 is going to be Biden's ego. I think Biden's going to run again. And I think he's going to win.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You think you think Biden's going to run again and you think he's going to win?
Well, DeSantis can beat him. But if Trump's the nominee, I wouldn't be surprised if Biden wins again.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, how articulate is Joe Biden going to be a year and a half from now?
What if all the media says, what if they do the same thing? They have CGI Joe Biden for all the appearances and there aren't any actual debates because Trump is a dangerous threat to democracy and we can't legitimize him on TV.
You know what? I want to stop talking about electoral politics.
Okay.
And I want to tell everyone that at the end of following every Unreported, we meet with patrons of Unregistered at Unregistered Live. It's a Zoom meeting with me and Michael and all of the patrons. And if you want to join us, and it's a lot of fun every Thursday night, just go to patreon.com/unregistered. And if you become a patron at any level, you get access to Unregistered Live. You can join us. So go to patreon.com/unregistered. And Michael, another fantastic job. And
Thanks.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot. And I will see you on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say about this show.
Yes, sir.
When I pitch your book to people, when I pitch the Renegade History of the United States, I always say there's going to be one chapter that makes you think this is the greatest book ever written, and there's going to be another chapter that makes you want to burn this book. I think I'm kind of proud of this show that like there's always going to be one take that we have that you really vibe with, and there's going to be one that makes you just want to. How do these people get a platform? These people are idiots.
Love and hate, baby. It's all about the love and the hate. That's what I live for.
Just don't be boring, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Shout out to Ben Bake from Mogadishu, Somalia. He's going to be joining us on Unregistered Live.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Can't wait. The libertarian paradise.
Yeah. We're building it.
All right, man.
Cool.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
See you on the other side. Yep. Bye.